So, so my name's Bruce Fenton. Thanks for having me. I'll just, tell you a little bit about myself, take a couple questions, and tell you a little bit about why I'm running. I come from the investment business. I'm a father of four, live in Durham, and the main reason I'm running is because of where the world is right now. So I feel strongly that the world is in a time of epic change. There's a book called The Fourth Turning, which sort of describes this concept that every 100 years or so, the world just changes a lot. And there's a lot of other historians and others, who followed this. And in my career in investments, I did really, really well by figuring out what was going to happen. I had a pretty good track record of that, whether it was, the dot-com boom and bust, which I called, or, emerging markets like Dubai or Bitcoin or things like that. That's one thing I have been good at, kind of seeing these big picture trends. And we have a trend going on now that's different than any of the other trends we've had in history, because it's this fourth turning type of change. And when that happens historically, and this is like clockwork, it's like every 100 years or so, this is a thing that happens in humanity. It's it's a thing we can look back through 100 years ago, World War One, and when this happens, borders change, money changes, who people trust change, how people think, how they get information, what they believe, and sometimes it's even bigger scale, entire ideas of thinking, like when the French and American Revolution came about, or a separation of church and state, new religions. These things happen in humanity, and usually when it happens really, really fast. The old world, and there's a lot of reasons for this, but the old world, the powers get kind of bloated and living on their old reputation. And we see it right now. Clinton Global Initiative, World Economic Forum, IMF, New York Times, CNN. These once vaunted institutions are crumbling before our eyes. The world is changing really, really radically, and old powers they're going away. The European Union it's not really it's a newer thing, but it's made up of older powers. That's losing its steam. And then there's new powers rising. Joe Rogan has more viewers than CNN, and TikTok and Gen Z and Bitcoin and these kind of things. The world is changing very radically, and what we saw over the last 2 years shows it can sort of go two different ways when you have these kind of times of radical change. And it's happened before in history. Sometimes you have a couple decades of darkness and tyranny, and sometimes you have a revolution in human freedom. And this is what we're facing right now. It's a way, way, way bigger deal than anybody alive has faced before. This isn't about I'm going to cut the taxes by 3%. This is about, will our country as we know it survive? Because right now the path is going to go one way or another. It's going to go down the way of the Constitution and freedom and human rights and the Bill of Rights and voluntary interaction and peace. And that's a way that we could naturally expand as humans and move to a more decentralized society. Or it's going to go down a path of tyranny and central control and mask mandates and mandatory injections and movement passes and boots on heads for a generation. And that's what we're facing right now. And it should be clear to everyone. And we get caught up in these political nonsense stuff where they tell me to come in and say how cute my kids are, or that I'm a veteran, or whatever. We are facing the possible end of our country as we know it. We are in very, very, very serious times. And the whole world is in this shaky situation. And they're redefining what words mean. And they're redefining, they're decreasing the power of religion in the place of the state. And they're exporting horrible ideas from China. China spent $100 million to tell us how great the lockdowns worked. Our country is spending PR here to tell us how great only with centralized control are we able to, their official death count is 0. They said that they had 18 months where they didn't have a single case. And their PR tells their people, look at those dumb Americans with their freedom, ha, ha, ha. And this is serious stuff, because this is affecting the world, and it's the world we have now. And half the people in our government, at least, are either favorable to these things or not fighting them. And that's on both sides of the aisle. And our rights are being eroded. Even Republicans now voting in favor of red flag laws and gun laws and things like that. So we've got, all the Democrats, a whole bunch, and then there's even wings of extremism within there, some BLM and Antifa folks and stuff that are, the woke mob. I call it the Church of Woke, because it is very much like a religion, and not a funny one. Church of Woke is a funny name, but the religion is kind of like a religion. It has high priests and dogma and heretics and everything else that you would have in a religion, including lack of logic. It must be faith, and you have High Priest Fauci, who's able to dictate to you that you have to wear a mask and you have to close your business, or you can't go to the gym, or you can't go to your favorite restaurant, or your nurse needs to have an injection mandated in her arm or she's going to lose her job. And these things are unacceptable in a free society. We can't have them. We just can't. And so recognizing where we are and what's going on in the world is something I'm good at. My background, like I said, is in economics and finance. I did that for 30 years at the highest levels. I understand the swamp. I understand how these things work. I've met world leaders and heads of state and kings and billionaires and things like that. And I understand how money works and how the economy works. And I have a long track record for 20 years plus of caring about freedom and caring about these kind of issues, freedom, ending tyranny, following the Constitution. And I understand economics a lot, which is really important because right now we have an economic crisis, and there's a reason for that. And I understand the reason. I saw it coming a couple of years ago as soon as they started printing money from thin air. So that unique combination, I'm a disruptor. I'm not an order follower. I'm a disruptor. I've been a disruptor every moment of my life since grade school. I've been a troublemaker and a disruptor, and I've done really, really well at it in my industry. I've broken down barriers and been able to build things. And that's what we need in Congress right now. That's what we need in the U.S. Senate. We need somebody who's a disruptor, somebody who's going to go in there and do like I did when I was with my kids. We went to 8 school board meetings. I got removed by police 5 times. That's what we need. We need people who will fight like this. We need somebody who's going to go down there and say, no, this isn't going to happen. Not on my watch. It's not going to happen. And so I don't want this job. Frankly, it's a whole enormous step down from my current job. It's miserable. I got 4 kids. I'd have to leave. I got one of the most beautiful homes in the entire state. But I'll do it because if the voters send me, because we have to do this. We have to send a message to Washington. We have to fight for our country, and we must. And what I would do is very simple. I'm not there to play politics. I don't care about politics. I actually don't like politics. And I'm not going down there to make friends or serve on the board, fancy boards with Nancy Pelosi, or go to black tie dinners or this kind of thing. I've done enough of that to last a lifetime. What I would do is go down there and say the exact thing that I've said to every single group of voters that I've met in New Hampshire. I would vote no against tyranny and against central control and abuses and against the expansion of our tax base every single time. And I'll vote yes for freedom, for the Constitution, for human rights. Every single time. That's it. That's what matters, is how you're going to vote. And in addition to that, I would use the power of the office to raise as much trouble as I can. Rock the boat as much as you're legally allowed. There's a lot of things you can do. You can hold up nominations. I'm going to do a filibuster as part of my campaign a week from today. We're going to see how long I can talk about liberty. And that's the kind of thing that you'll see down there. And that's what we need right now. So my name is Bruce Fenton. That's basically a quick summary, and be happy to take questions. So thank you. Yes?
What is a constitutional outsider?
So I basically just break down the 2 words. Somebody who cares a lot about the Constitution. I think the Constitution is something that unifies all Republicans. It should unify all Americans. And it seems almost a cliche to mention the Constitution, but it really, really is an important thing that is not being followed in a lot of ways right now. An outsider, that's it. I'm not from politics. I've never even run for dog catcher before. I'm not in politics. I'm not, I've volunteered on campaigns and voted and that kind of thing. And I've been kind of an activist. I've probably been to more meetings with a megaphone than I have to once with, in boardrooms. But
so are you a constitutionalist?
Yeah. I mean, we've got to follow the Constitution for sure. Yeah.
It just seems like a funny way to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my number one.
Does it say? Yeah. Oh, yeah. On this.
People who are constitutionalists, and if they don't like something, try to get it changed.
Yeah. I mean, that needs to be the base of the law of the land is the Constitution, and that needs to be the base of everything. And we have all of these unconstitutional things, these unconstitutional wars, unconstitutional, and I've joked before. It's like, other than quartering troops in your home, they've violated almost everything. And it's really bad. And there are several things the senators can do. Obviously, legislation. You can also you vote on confirmations for federal judges and military. By the way, it's a slightly separate subject, but you vote on generals and things like that. And I think there's generals at the highest level who aren't following our Constitution, and that's a problem. That's a really, really serious problem in this kind of world. And so Ron Paul is my favorite elected official in recent United States history. So he's the kind of person that I would emulate. Basically, if it's not in the Constitution, you don't do it. He was always. I became a fan of him when he was talking about these unconstitutional wars. Wars of aggression all over the world. It cost us trillions of dollars, billions and billions and billions, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and for what? In the case of Iraq, what do we have to show for it? We killed over 1 million people. We many in the U.S. are pointing fingers at Putin's terrible things that Putin does, but we were responsible for a massive amount of death, and we should at least acknowledge that and try and prevent that kind of mistake. Those lives are no less valuable than anybody else's life. So and that's the root of it, is the Constitution. Wars are supposed to be declared. We were in Afghanistan longer than World War I and World War II combined. That's absurd. I think more than twice as long as World War I and World War II combined. And I believe that the spending, even adjusted for inflation, is more, which is crazy. Yes.
So I have no doubt that you're going to be able to talk for days.
Practice it.
The one person will give you a run for your money.
I do have another question.
Yes.
So I did not hear what I think is the number one vile thing going on in our country, and that is the lack of rule of law. Whether you're talking the local police in Northwood picking and choosing what rules they're going to follow or what laws they're going to follow, through the Supreme Court, it's obvious that one half or the other is not following the law.
Yeah.
On almost every vote. So what do you think about the rule of law and the issues we have? If you look at immigration, I mean, if we followed the law, we wouldn't be having the issues that we're having right now. So we just seem to be ignoring and picking and choosing the laws that we decide that we want to go on.
Well, immigration's a great example because the policy's so bad that it's not followed. A lot of times, and that's a great example because a lot of times the reason that the laws aren't working is because they're too broad, aren't being, they're too hard to follow. In many cases, we have too many laws, and police are burdened by so many different things that they don't have the resources to chase all the different laws. And they'd also, when there's a book called 3 Felonies a Day, it says the average business person in America commits 3 felonies a day. If they go and investigate you, they just decide you're going to be a target and they investigate you. There's a chance they're going to find, oh, you didn't have this permit for this thing, or your car, or there was the old joke about the mattress tax. Remember the mattress? They used to say felony if removed. It was misunderstood. It's for the stores, but these are the kind of things that there's just too many laws. We have millions of pages of laws. So one thing is to reduce the laws and then really follow well the laws that are there. We should have laws that protect life, liberty, property, perhaps enforcement of contracts. That's pretty much it. So we should scrap 99% of the laws probably and go back to those basics. And then those should be very, very enforced. Life, liberty, property. So all these people stealing in San Francisco, that's on the list. That's property. You cannot just go into a Walgreens and steal armloads of makeup and walk out. That's absurd. And it's happening all over the country. And it's starting to happen even here in New Hampshire, one of the most remote and isolated and safe places for this kind of thing. But if you look at the police, and I talk to a lot of police and things like that when I'm traveling, talk to a lot of people, it's creeping in now. There is like Antifa type violence. It's small cases so far, but this is the problem when you have the very fundamental ideas about what we believe in being redefined, and words being redefined, and ideas like words are violence and therefore it's okay to hit somebody because you don't like their words. No, that's fundamentally flawed. It's wrong. And that's something that has come out of, a lot of these violent protest movements, Antifa, BLM, from a couple summers ago. Just bad ideas. So, yeah, I mean, long answer, but I think overall less laws and really, really enforce the important ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
The question is, how do you wake up the sleeping majority?
Unfortunately, they're going to wake up one way or another. It just might be because they're starving or they're
It's really bad.
they're in pain. Yeah. I mean,
There's a reason why the woke can get away with what they're doing is because nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah.
And the organizations that are supposed to inform us of what's going on are with them.
right. Yeah. The media has been, but eventually, the world is a tough place, and eventually it evens out because people do need to know what's true. So all of these media that just lie and manipulate people, it's not a sustainable model. Some wise business person is going to come up with the same idea that thousands of others over hundreds and hundreds of years say, hey, I know what I'll do. I'll make a thing and I'll tell the truth and I'll inform people. We don't have that right now. We certainly don't with CNN or MSNBC or any of these things. So, how do we wake them up? I'm optimistic. I'm trying to be an optimist in this situation because I think that the alternative is quite horrible. We could see times darker than anybody in our lifetime has seen, for sure. I mean, we could see.
We're much better armed than the previous generations that had to go through this.
Yeah, thank goodness. And the march of.
That way with the thermonuclear devices that are floating around the world.
Yes. Yeah, the march of tyranny is a big concern. I don't want to see my kids grow up in a China-like situation with movement passes and social credit scores. Oh, and the other thing, I should mention this because it's from my industry, the money business. They're trying to come up with these CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So what they're trying to do is put your money and make it almost like a Bitcoin or some kind of digital money they can send you, but they want to control it. It's from the Fed itself. It's the actual dollar. So their pitch is like, hey, look at this. It's fancy. It's digital. It's modern. You can get it instantly, and it's real dollars from the real Fed. Okay. Flip side, they have the power to shut your money off. Game over. Game over. Forget it. Forget it. That is it. That is worse than almost anything else they can do. If they have the power to shut your money off, it's game over. All you are is.
Do that in China?
They do it in China all the time, and Trudeau tried to do it with the truckers. They tried to shut off their PayPal and their Venmo and their credit cards. But if the CBDCs go through in the United States, they won't need that step. They'll just be able to shut it off. And it is countdown. The minute CBDCs are the money, it is a countdown to destruction of our way of life. It's just all it takes is a matter of them expanding the power, which only terrorists will be shut down. Only racists will be shut down. Only misinformation will be shut down, and they'll expand it and expand it and expand it. And then all you need is one bad politician, which there's already plenty of, and then especially some artificial emergency or real emergency, and then that's it. The combination of those three things, and we lose our freedom for a generation. It has to be these kids, maybe their kids, that grow up and they've got to fight with guns and take it back with bloodshed. And we just can't allow that to happen. We've got to fight this now because this is happening. They're talking about it. They're coming to you with the knife stabbing in your face. They're telling us right to our face what they're doing. They're saying that they want to do these things. And there's vast interest from China and other places that are already doing it.
But like you said, it's hard because a lot of the people are still they have no clue.
Yeah, it is hard to wake people up. And this is why I say that this wokeism is like a religion, because people will not believe. They just don't want to hear. They don't want to hear certain things. And it is very much like an identity thing. And you can see millions of videos, and I see it in person on the campaign trail. Sometimes people just have a logic break. Their brains aren't working right. It's a combination of brainwash, and you can tell. Then you can tell because they don't have a logical argument. As soon as somebody gets really angry, I had a guy come up like this, angry. He was asking, I think it was about masks, and he was like this up by my campaign van. He was like balled fist, angry, but he didn't have an argument. He didn't, just the normal. So it is brainwashing and propaganda cannot be underestimated, and we know this from history. I mean, people will take their neighbor and turn them in and have them murdered. That's what they do. Cops will beat down people's doors and shoot them in the head because they're ordered to. And we can't sit here and say, well, our cops would never do that. Are we out of our mind? We're the one society in the history of the world where, no, our people won't follow orders. They'll stand up and they'll be the ones. No, they will not. They will not. Because what will happen is a few will, and then they'll have the other 80% kill the ones who refuse the orders. I mean, what you're betting on if you bet against, if you're not looking at this tyranny, is that they'll never be able to find anybody who enforce bad orders. Maybe the current police, hopefully police in this town or something, like, no way, I'm not going to go take people's guns. Okay, you're fired. All you got to do is find one thug. You find 100 thugs, 1,000 thugs, and you get the power of a Kamala Harris with the power of the 300,000 person standing army of the TSA. And then what are you going to do about it? What do you do when President Kamala, which could happen in a month or 2 or 3 or 5 or right after is it really out of the realm of possibility? He's not capable of even operating, and he's not probably in great health. And I don't see how they can really keep this charade up. So at least, they're good chance they wait until after the midterms. And then we'll have President Kamala Harris. He could step down. We have Kamala. And then what do we have? Then we have this wokeism, but instead of an absentee person who's being held by puppet strings, we have a young, energetic, new news story that all the woke mob and the media can fuel. And we have her energy and her passion and her, same gusto that she used to lock away all those marijuana offenders. And then we've got her with this massive, huge, horrible, violent machine that nobody in America's ever had. We got this huge bloated thing that Republicans and Democrats were guilty of growing and growing and growing. 300,000 people in the TSA. Didn't even exist when I was in the Navy. I tell people who are 20 years old, I say, yeah, when I was in the Navy, I had my plane ticket. I got on the plane. No ID. No metal detector. And now we have 300,000. They're here in New Hampshire busting illegal massage parlors. This was supposed to save us from the bearded terrorists in the caves who were going to come over here and take away our way of life. And now they're everywhere. And then when you have a President Kamala have the power on this, again, game over. There's too much of an apparatus. They have too much surveillance. They know your phones. They know everything about you. There's big data. They can shut you off. I've had friends. I have a friend who's CEO of a major company, Overstock. You might know Overstock. They're publicly traded. I was on the board of the company. CEO was a libertarian. Didn't like Trump, actually. But when the election happened, he says, well, I don't like Trump, but I'm a patriotic American. I've got a lot of resources. He's wealthy, and he knows computers really well. He knows all the best computer experts. He has great lawyers. He's like, I'm a patriot. I want to find out what happened. So he did some research. He hired some lawyers and some computer experts and some techies and did his research. Well, what do you think happened then? He's gone. He's off of Facebook, off of Twitter, off of Google. Everything's gone. He's like a non-person. And he was a very popular guy. So he just wrote a book. All he did was he released his findings, and they don't like what his findings were. So so this kind of thing, and this is done with the government is backing this. The CDC will go to Facebook and say these 12 accounts are responsible for 80% of the misinformation. It's like, no. You don't get to decide what is true and not true. We don't need government bureaucrats deciding what is misinformation. Misinformation should be allowed, and we the people should be the determinant of what is true. We don't need government telling us that. These are the fundamentally flawed systemic things that we're talking about now, like redefining the word woman. Or it may not seem that harmful, but when you can't protect women if you can't define women, And there are these people in the world, human beings, who are capable of bearing eggs and having children and breastfeeding children. I use the word woman to describe those people. And I think that those people should be protected. And if somebody wants to use a different word, that's fine, but we still need something to protect these people and care about different people who are different. So when you go and you try and define the very meaning of words and fundamental principles of justice and morality, and when it's okay to use force and aggression, and when it's okay to silence somebody, and you think in terms of workable systems, what can work and what can't work? Can it work if you have a politician who can decide what's true or not? Can it work if you can have a scientist who can decide that people's business? No, it can't work. It can't work because it's either already tyranny, in my opinion, or if you like it, and I say this to Democrats and socialists a lot, I say, well, would you want your least favorite politician to have these powers? Of course not. It's not a workable system. Well, thank you.
What brought you to New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, well, live free or die. I was a Free State signer. About 10 years ago, I signed the Free State Project Pledge, which says, basically move to New Hampshire and pursue the minimal amount of government, being life, liberty, and the protection of life, liberty, and property. And I think somewhere in there it says encourages you to maybe even run for office, which now I ended up doing by happenstance.
So, how long have you been here?
I've been here about 6 years, five and a half years, I think.
Where'd you come from?
We were in Mass, down, which is a great reason for strengthening the southern border wall.
Well,
let the Mass people
there's
like me want to escape.
Quite a few
Yeah.
of us. I'm from
I was in
Mass.
Duxbury.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. I grew up in Saugus.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
Cousins live in Duxbury.
nice.
Yeah, and I'm from Glen. You're from
Oh, good.
North Shore too.
Yeah,
right?
we meet a lot of Mass people. It's
Yeah.
nice.
And all those with a brain left.
It's good.
Yeah.